Hi there, welcome back to the Bible Talk, a podcast brought to you by the Songdo International Seventh-day Adventist Church. I'm your host, Angie Kim. In the Bible Talk, we discuss a wide range of topics relating to Christianity, church, and the Bible. It is an open and safe space to talk about the questions that we may have had at some point in our daily Christian walks, but we did not get an opportunity to freely discuss those within church, at home, or elsewhere. Today's episode features Samuel Dana, Angie Kim, myself, and David Cho. With the memory of 2022 Lunar New Year fresh still, since we celebrated less than 2 weeks ago here, we discussed a topic that is linked to major national holidays in Korea, which is ancestral rites that are held on these holidays. Kicking off the discussion today is the question of how should Christians deal with ancestor worship in Korea?
Happy Sabbath. Welcome to the Bible Talk. Today we're going to talk about ancestor worship in Korea. Before we start, for our listeners and for those who are not familiar with this term, Yeonji, can you briefly explain what ancestor worship in Korean? It's called 제사. So can you explain what this is?
Yeah, I'll try. So just based on my personal experience, because my father's side family does this ancestral worship. So yes, normally we do it twice a year. I mean, the some of the big ones, I suppose. So once on Lunar New Year and once on Chuseok, the Korean Thanksgiving. And how my family does it is that they prepare like a huge table, like a feast table. So there is the local produce like fruits and vegetables, but there's a lot of fried food, some things that you don't normally eat on a day-to-day life, but something really, really extravagant. And and when I say they, it's mostly women. Traditionally, it has always been women who had to really labor and who had to prepare those tables of food. And why are they doing that in such extravagant manner? Because they are doing it for their dead ancestors, and they prepare the table before the so-called dead ancestors. And once the table is all set up, early in the morning, my family would prepare for this ceremony, and they burn the incense. They say, with the incense, the dead ancestor spirits would come to where the tables have been set up for them. And it's almost as if these people are like alive, and so they would open the what do you call it? It's like warm bowl of rice, and then they have a lid. So they open the lid, and then they put the chopsticks in it, so that it's as if, really somebody living would come visit us in the house, and they would have a good meal. And so, we give, the family gives the dead spirits, the spirits of the dead ancestors, to come and eat the food prepared for them. And then they will be like bowing down before the table like twice. So once to welcome them and say hello to them. And then once they are done eating, supposedly, then the family would get up and go, bow down again, saying goodbye, come again next year, that kind of thing. So that's how my family does it. And and then when I was younger, we would also pay a visit to the graveyard of those ancestors, and then basically do the same thing. Just take some food and then set it up before the graveyard, and then bow down to say, we are here, your descendants. We have lived a good life so far. Our lives are going well, and we are here to acknowledge you, thank you for the blessings, that kind of thing. Because they think all the good things in life, it's because of your ancestors and we owe everything to them. So here it is, how they normally do the ancestral ceremony worship. So
Thanks for the explanation. So this began from, I'm not sure when it began, but it goes way back from ancient times. And they kind of have this belief that your ancestors, the spirits of your ancestors, will take care of you. So something good will happen if you are good to them with this preparation, with these ceremonies and all that. Well, nowadays, not many people believe that, but they still do it because I think it's cultural. Korean people like ceremonies. So even though they don't believe in these steps, in these things, they still do it. Now, why it's relevant to today's topic, to Christianity, is if you are a Christian, you're not supposed to bow down to someone other than God. There are cultures where you bow down to show respect, not to worship, of course. But this ancestor worship ceremony is about worship. It's not really showing respect. So then it becomes a problem, and so many Christians in Korea are having a hard time because of this and with their beliefs. So how would you suggest that they do when culture contradicts your beliefs?
Okay, I like the idea you sharing about the Korean culture, and I think it's not just limited to Korean culture. It's a worldwide thing, and Satan is so crafty, very wise, and knows how to exploit people's weakness or people's let me just use the word weakness. And every time, human beings feel that when we are left alone, we are so empty, we need something spiritual. Generally, human beings we are spiritual human beings in some way. So sometimes we think just beyond the physical, there is some spirituality somewhere that might guide us. That's what we feel. And one thing I would like to, for the basics, is that just as you both gave, especially we should be able to distinguish between respecting people or showing love to people and worshiping them. And we should also know that in today's society, it's not only the dead people worship. People even worship the living today. So we should have it at the back of our mind. And I would also just want us to know that this is an ancient thing. It happens across societies. It's only when we focus on God that we know that when people die, they really have no power in anything. You get that? But when people die, the Bible tells us that they sleep and the dead know nothing. But Satan will come in and tell us that, these people are in the traditional way, as we call it in Ghana. We say, in traditional religion, they believe that death is a transition to another world. So we have this word that the dead people's land or their own world. So people think that when our ancestors or people die, they go to the next world. So you can still communicate with them, and they can, because they have more power now and they can protect you from there. So people want to pray, they pray through their ancestors. Even to the extent that they think they are praying to the God, there is a God somewhere, but they have to do it through a medium, which is their ancestors. And one way to get through the ancestors normally is this grave thing, or they create something in the family or the house or within the family that when they want to communicate, they want to do this. Even it happened in the Bible. When Saul was going through difficult times, he went for this magician to resurrect Samuel's dead body, to come out and speak to him. So it's not just Korean. That's what I want us to know. So when Saul departed from God to the extent that he felt, with this way, I still need to hear what will happen. So he went to consult this medium, and this medium had to bring back the dead of Samuel. Satan can make many things happen. And he came and spoke to David, or through the magician to let. And even just as I'm mentioning, today I don't want to mention the name of a church, but when I finish, you know. We have people, when people die, or even the biblical, we don't worship anybody apart from Jesus Christ or God. But in biblical times, we have St. Paul, we have St. John's, we have St. Peter's. And all their images are in churches and in cities where people go to bow. And today, even people who died recently, when we have been, we call it, they've been made saint. There is a terminology to do that. They've been not coronated, something where they make it for them to become saints, and they are worshipped. So it's not just, it's even in the Christian church today. That's what I want us to know. And now you go to most of many countries, you find these statues of great people who we claim they were very Christian, or this, and people go there to bow every year and worship. So, and it happens across many religions. So there are some of the things. In my local community, what I know is it's not like more formalized like the Korean one you do during festivals, but when I grew up, when I go to the village, when we go on vacation, we go to the rural area, you go to our uncles, our grandfather's place. Normally, they may have this symbol maybe at the entrance of the house, where maybe every week or sometime they slaughter an animal, maybe fowls, and worship their ancestors. And the time comes that even, you know, in the local communities, they don't have cemeteries. Mostly, if somebody dies, if he's a man, the old man, they bury him in the house. So you find graves in the house. And maybe later, when the wife or somebody died, they bury some of them in the yard, otherwise somebody at the entrance of the house. So if there's any big occasion, they'll gather the family around the grave and make sacrifice and put the blood there and put some food there. So they are all things. But we shouldn't limit that to... I want to let us know that in society, we may have dear ones in our family. When they die, we can remember them. You get that? And we still remember, especially people who have done good to us, or they were very close to us. But we should make sure we don't worship them. So the worship should be done away with. So that's why we should be clear on that. And going back to the Bible, when you look at the 10 Commandments, it was stated clearly in Exodus chapter 20, verse 4. He says, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or a likeness of anything that is in heaven or above, that is on earth beneath, or that is in the waters under the earth. And thou shalt, 5, he says, thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them, for the Lord thy God am a jealous God. I just want that part. He says we shouldn't bow and worship anything. And when we come to Matthew, we come to Luke, where Jesus Christ, after his 40 days, 40 nights fasting, and he was tempted by the devil. You know, one of the points were the devil told him, if you bow down and worship me, I'll give you all the kingdoms of the earth. And Jesus Christ elaborated and told him that the Bible states clearly that thou shalt not worship any other God. So clearly, that at that point too, he mentions one part I would like to reiterate. Sorry, let me come. It was mentioned that, then said Jesus unto him, get thee hence, Satan, it is written. So this was, you know, Satan was quoting the Bible to justify. So we shouldn't think that it's only to try. That's what I'm saying. Even in the church today, people will quote and show you, oh, in the Bible it happened this way. But we should also tell the devil in the face that it is also written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only thou shalt thou serve. So we should reverence and worship remains only on God. We can respect our living parents, we can respect our dead grandparents, but we shouldn't worship them. We should bring that clear thing. So that's what I want. Thank you.
Now, let me give you a specific example. Now, when there's a few Christian, or when you're the only Christian in your family, and when you gather together with your family members, relatives, and all that, and you have to be involved in this ceremony. And well, there are some people, I mean, some Christians who may participate in preparing the foods, but not participate in bowing down and all burning the incense and all that. Now, there are other Christians who are more fundamental, that they don't show up at all, because I don't want to take any part in that ceremony at all. Now, why this has become a problem is because there's this huge peer pressure. Besides, culturally, Korea is a collective society, and people don't like it when you make an individual decision. They want everybody to make a same decision, collective decisions. So when you say, "Oh, I'm a Christian, I can't do this because of my belief," sometimes you may be persecuted with words, or in some cases, maybe physically. So how would you suggest that they do when they're facing with this situation? Some people will say or make an argument that, "Oh, I know that you're a Christian, and we know that you don't believe in this thing, but can you just bow down, not believing this thing? Can you just participate, or at least pretend, so everyone will be happy?"
Yeah, that's exactly the same argument that my mom would use. The reason why I said my mom is because my father is a sincere believer of the ancestral worship. And so, yeah, my mom was just trying to maintain this peace within the family, I suppose. And so she emphasizes the importance of flexibility, and going with the flow. And she said the same thing. Your heart doesn't need to be in it, in that act of bowing down or, taking part in the ceremony, but just, do it. What's the big deal? And she would tell me, "You're brainwashed." Your Christian beliefs, it's all, being brainwashed. And so, yeah, I can't say I have found my answer, like the perfect answer. But as David pointed out, also the reason why it's so difficult for Korean families is because their sense of filial piety, this duty, respect towards parents and your elders, right? So the children should not have any say, but just do it. And actually, I don't think everything about ancestral ceremony is wrong, because it started with the idea of you remembering the people who have come before you. And it's not the case for my family, but if, let's say, there are 3-generation Adventist family members and their ancestors were also faithful Adventist Christian, then obviously I think it's a good thing that the families come together on a special occasion to really remember what it was like for them back then, how they kept their faith despite the difficulties during their time, which was very different from our times, and so on. But as Samuel also pointed out, it's all kind of crafted in a way, because they say you should remember your forefathers, your descendants. Well, they are dead now, but we need to show them our respect still, and so that's when our views kind of depart. Of course, we cannot accept that, because as the Bible says, somebody who's dead is sleeping or is asleep, and there is no way of knowing for that person what's happening, right? And so, yeah, I just, before I forget, I am really glad that Samuel reminded us of the verse, Exodus 20, verse 4. So why it's important for Christians to not bow down? Because that bowing down to somebody or something means you're worshiping that person or that thing, you know? And so it was very refreshing to look at this verse. And while we were reading this verse, I was reminded of how Daniel's three friends, you remember, if you look at Daniel chapter 3, you know, Daniel's three faithful friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Yes, when they were challenged to bow down, fall down, and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar set up, right? They refused to bow down. They refused to fall down and worship at the sound of cymbals, flutes, and, you know, that noisy kind of situation. And so they stood firm and they told King Nebuchadnezzar that, you know, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If that is the case, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up. So yes, although my mom and other people try to convince me otherwise, the act of bowing down to something or somebody, yes, it means you are worshiping that person or that thing. So I think it's something that we need to be extremely cautious of, and we only show our allegiance to God and show our respect to God, you know? And I think another thing why people become so reminiscent of the times that he or she may have spent with the dead person is because there are high chances that the person concerned, when, let's say, the dead person was alive, he or she may have had a bad relationship with the person. You know, it's just, they were in a fight, let's say, but something happened and the person is now gone. And so the person who's alive didn't have a chance to really make ties, with that person. Say, I'm sorry, you know, that was really wrong of me, or can you forgive me? So, you know, obviously death happens. It could strike us anytime, right? And so when that happens, that person who's now living feels very apologetic, and it's like, you know, his or her heart is filled with grief. And so, you know, that I think could be a driving motivation. So, oh yeah, I didn't get to apologize. We didn't mend our ties when the person was alive. And so when they, let's say, go visit the graveyard of the person, then, you know, they begin to talk to that person, thinking that person is still listening. I'm sorry, you know, how are you doing? Everything is well. You know, are you having a good time there? You know, that kind of thing. And I also see that in some of my family members. Let's say when my mom or aunt visit the graveyard of my grandmother, they remember all the things that they didn't do so well to my grandmother, all the harsh words, or, you know, and so then they become very tender-hearted. And so by visiting my grandmother's graveyard, they try to somehow, I feel like, make it up to her, although she's not there anymore, she's not breathing anymore, right? So, I mean, I know it's a tender moment for them. I think in some way, I think it's beautiful, but how wonderful, more excellent would have been if she and my aunt maintained good ties with my grandmother when she was still alive, you know? And so, yeah, my thing is also, it was like the toughest moment for me to lose my grandmother, who was the only Christian in my family. She raised me as a baby, and I think when that happened, when she passed away, I cried so much. I like wept for like several days nonstop, you know? It was the toughest thing, but I didn't have any regret because I've called her almost every day when I was studying in the US, far away from her. I just made sure that I told her I love her, I care about her. I thank her for all the prayers that she prayed for me, you know? And so, yes, it was so tough on me personally, but I'm convinced that she knew that I loved her, You know, she would even mark on her calendar the days that I called her from the US, and nobody in the family was really doing that for her, you know. And so I'm not saying, you know, I was really doing something great, but that's my thing. I want to make sure that I tell my loved ones when they are alive, my father, my mother, and everybody else, I tell them I love them and I show them my love, you know. And I also think that's a Christian thing to do. You know, we are to uplift each other and show them how we love them, right? As Jesus has loved us. So, yeah, that's something that I wanted to share.
So you're saying that about bowing down, you should say no. But what about preparing foods? And except for bowing down, do you think it's okay for Christians to participate in other ceremonies, like preparation of the foods and all the other things? Do you think it's a compromise?
Okay, let me come in. I like the experience she shared, and sorry about your grandma. I think I just wanted to mention the same thing. You know, it's difficult to break the chain, something that has been institutionalized in the society. Even maybe had it not been the love of God, you would have been part of it and even championing it more stronger. And you are coming as maybe a lone ranger, let me put it that way, and you are coming as an individual or a minority in this big family that has done this for a long time. So just imagine the opposition you are going to go through. And you can't fight the system and win at a goal. It may take a gradual process. First, letting them know your stand is even a step forward. And being true to your God, you know, you can't say this one time and do it the other way. Because somebody, oh, okay, oh, I'll participate anyway, but when it comes to the worship, I'll not worship. But a small thing, you come back and you are doing the worship yourself. Another time, but somebody will say, just like the lady said, but I saw you, just like I told Peter, to the extent, so why did you do the other time, but today you are not doing? You get that? So be true to you. You may fail sometimes, you know, but just as we mentioned in the beginning, it's two things or three things happening at the same time. But it's the worship part we don't agree. Family gathering is perfect. Reunion is perfect. Cooking together to eat is perfect, because in the end, the objective is that even these people are not going to eat the food. The ancestors are not going to eat the food, but you just putting it there. The next thing is that, will you prepare the food? If you say you will not prepare the food, then what will you eat in that point? That's what I'm saying, that even when people gather, you need to eat food. When they are doing everything, just let them know you take part. But when it comes to this particular one, you are not doing it. I just want to give you an example in Ghana, then I come back to this example from the Bible. One thing is that in Ghana, you know, most societies, especially in some of the regions, they always have their funerals on Saturday. That is the most convenient way. And most Adventists in these families have problems, because maybe your loved one dies, today is the family, and you say you are, and they take family funerals very serious. So if you say you are not going to participate, you are going to have a really hard time with the people. And even the society around will say, oh, even your father or your mom died, and they are having the funeral, you are not present on the Sabbath. You are going to have a big challenge. And sometimes even your family members who are not Adventists are going to have problem with you. To the extent that some, they even bury that fellow that same day, and you will not be there because it's very important to them. So that's one challenge. But people who started in the beginning started fighting this gradually, saying that, oh, if it's everything about the family, I will do everything. Sabbath, Friday, sundown, I will not join again until, if it's in the evening after Sabbath, I can come if there's anything. But during the Sabbath hours, I will not come. So gradually, people have come to understand. And now it's come, oh, you know, this guy is an Adventist, he will not come to the funeral. But sometimes some people are double standard. Maybe I tell my friends that, oh, today is Sabbath, I will not come for a funeral. They have their funeral. Maybe they were their family friends, you don't go. But they see you another time going to another person's funeral, because that fellow, maybe he's a rich person, and you think if you don't go, it's very bad. So just be true. On Sabbath, I don't do what? I don't sell. On Sabbath, I don't go for funeral. Or on Sabbath, I don't go to work. So be true to that. But if you do this one and you don't do this one, so should you be there? I don't think family gathering, you should have a problem being there. In the Bible, just as you were mentioning Daniel, his 3 friends, people always lose sight of the fact that it was only Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego who were there. Israelites have been enslaved by Babylonians for several years. So there were thousands of Israelites who were in Babylon at that time. And the next thing was that Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego were also present even when the statue was erected. They didn't say we are going to stay home. They were there. The only thing was that they said when the alarm or the bell is rung, alarm is rung, everybody should bow down, fall and bow. That was the part they didn't take part. They were there. Because the king has commanded, come, you have to go. Even that was, even they would have said, no, the opposition is that we will not even get near. But they were there. They respected them in every part, but when it came to the alarm or the sound, bow down, they said no. So go with the family, be with them, do the gathering. It's a time you are remembering. Remember your ancestors. Oh, maybe one of my, even today, I've mentioned to her, there are even heroes in our times. We say, oh, this man fought for Korean independence. Today is independence. Oh, this person liberated us from this colonial rule. We all celebrate them. Let's celebrate our ancestors. Maybe this was the man who came to our family. He really brought everybody along. We can even have, maybe this was the first Adventist person in my family, and he really directed everything. So like she's remembering her grandmom. The grandmom really took care of her. It's good. Remember them. But she going beyond and maybe putting her grandma's picture in the room to remember her. It's nice. But when she begins to bow down and worship the grandma, that is where the problem comes in. I can have even my grandfather's picture even in my Bible. Every time I look at it, then I'm very proud of them. I really celebrate them, but never worship them. That is it.
Thanks for drawing lines, for clarifying this. Now, this is a trivial question that some Christians raise. They ask, what about the foods? Can we eat the foods? Say when I'm there, I can participate in preparing the foods and I don't worship, I don't bow down. But after the ceremony, can I eat the foods? Because obviously these foods are prepared for idol worship. So do you think they can eat the foods?
I'll get back to the quotation again. If they prepare the food, do you really believe the ancestors ate the food? Or it was for them to do something about the food? To me, my intention is that this food was prepared for the family. And they only invited another aspect of the family they believe in to come and eat. Because if I sit there and just say, oh, this food is poison, or it has been contaminated, it's showing some self-righteousness. You are going to have problem with them. And that's why, I don't know whether it's in Corinthians or where Christians those days in those cities, I wanted to get it before I speak, but it was that normally they didn't eat in unbelievers' house. Because in most unbelievers' houses, they ate unclean foods. And one other one was that even though the food was clean, but the food had been sacrificed to gods. You get that? So that's where Christians go, oh, they don't even want to have anything to do with unbelievers, even the people they wanted to bring to church, because they know that even the food or the animals they buy, the one that they had sacrificed, even it's a clean animal, but it has been sacrificed to a god. That is where Paul said, do not discriminate against it, but when you go, what God has sanctified, let no man call. That's why some Christians say, oh, we can eat everything. But one of the complaints about those people of those days was that this animal had been sacrificed to other gods, so we don't want to eat. But I think as long as it's clean food and you didn't have anything, pray over the food, God will sanctify it, and you eat. It shouldn't be that whether it was, because you don't even know most of this food, we don't know the people who are even rearing these animals. Because, for instance, we have this halal meat, you know that, and if you are staying in communities where we have other religions, Because before somebody even sacrifice one animal, they say something before sacrificing. I know that in my local community, some people eat animals that die, like whether slaughtered or they eat. But Muslims in particular are very particular about the meat they eat because they want to show that it's really slaughtered. It's not that it died. So what happened was that anytime they came to our house, they ate our food. They believe that we don't take pork, and they also believe that we don't eat dead animals. The essence is that they want to make sure the animal is slaughtered. But when they go to anybody's house, or even most of them have food vendors, or they go to any society, they bring that a Muslim to come and slaughter the animal to show that other Muslims can eat. Before the Muslim slaughter the animal, he just maybe say a short prayer. So do you say, I will not eat this animal because it was somebody said a prayer over it before? So to me, if you prepare the food and they show it to their grandfathers or their ancestors and bring it back, I just pray over it and eat. I can't say I'll go and prepare another food. You are going to complicate something that we need to show them love so that we can bring them in. Otherwise, just like those days Paul was saying, some people used to go to other people and ask him, so what animal did you use to prepare this soup? In that way, you can't win them. We are not also saying that you really see that, oh, they prepared it with pork. They prepared it with something, it's not good. But you just go, oh, God bless this food and eat. No. If you see it, if you see it and it's not good, just tell them, oh, maybe I can't eat this. But when you don't see, don't be asking, okay, did you put maybe shrimp inside? Those ones, you are going to push them over. So as Christians, we should be wise, and we should be we shouldn't compromise, but we shouldn't be too rigid to push people away. Yeah. That's right.
Now, my next question is, there's another thing called, in Korean, it's called chudo yebe, which means memorial worship service for the dead ones. So, when your family members are Christians, now they know that ancestor worship is bad. So what they invented was this another form of worship service. Well, maybe Yeonji, can you briefly explain what this is?
Actually, my family, not being Christian, doesn't do that. So maybe you are in a better position to talk about it.
I'll explain it. So, Christians in Korea, they couldn't break free from this tradition. So I personally think that it would have been better to have nothing nothing to do with the ancestor worship or memorial worship service and all that. But they still wanted to have some kind of memorable time to think about their ancestors. Because of their Christian belief, they felt uncomfortable or guilty about ancestor worship service, so they invented this memorial worship service for the ancestors, which I think is a compromise. But some people argue that this is okay, and I had an argument with my dad, not a fierce one, of course, but we had a debate, not an argument. Because my father's side, some of them are not Christians and some of them are Christians. And we gathered together on holidays. And my dad wanted to do a memorial worship service for the dead ones. And I opposed it. Why are we doing that? Because worship is only for God. It's not for people, human beings. But he said, look, when we do the memorial worship service, we're not going to talk about the dead ones. We're just going to have a worship service, and after the worship service, we will just have a short conversation about the dead ones. So share our memories with the grandfather or grandmother, and so we'll have that time after the worship service. So during the worship service, we will only talk about God. He said that if we do this, maybe we can evangelize them. Maybe this can be a channel or a chance to win their minds. Because otherwise, we don't have any chance to introduce Christianity to them. So he did it, and I was going to be absent in that ceremony. I mean, in that memorial worship service, but I attended it because, well, there's another reason. Bible says that we should honor our parents, and if I don't show up, well, my dad is a pastor, so if he's organizing the whole program and I don't show up, and everybody else show up, then it wouldn't look good to him. So I showed up and I watched how it went. Well, later I thought, well, maybe it's not that bad as I thought it would be, because just like he said, during the worship service, he also talked about the state of the dad. So he explained it, and he basically did a short sermon to other relatives. So dads know nothing, so we should be aware of that, and there should be no worship and mindsets of worshiping them. And so during the worship service, this was for our grandma, and he never talked about her. The only time he mentioned about her name was because she was a Christian. I inherited her faith, so I was thankful to that, and I am thankful to God. And so during the worship service, he talked only about God mostly, and then after the worship service, just like he said, then after the worship service, because families are gathered, so they shared their own memories about the deceased one. So my question is, do you think it's okay to do it like this? Or do you think it's still a compromise?
Thanks, David, for that. I'm actually surprised that because hearing from your explanation, I think it's very harmless. The worship clearly was for God, and I emphasized in my earlier intervention that I do see the value in remembering things, like remembering your ancestor who was a faithful person, for instance, like the way Israelites remember Abraham, and they are proud to be called the descendants of Abraham, right? And so, yes, the worship service is for God, but you meet maybe on the anniversary of the passing of, your family member. But, otherwise, if you don't even meet like that for such worship service, do you think you would really, like, on a random day per year, you would remember the good things that your grandmother has done for the family, or, when she was alive, how her faith was like, for instance? So I just hearing from you and how the worship program went, how, your father talked about the state of the dead from the Bible and everything, I do think that it was a good kind of evangelism opportunity too, and it also gave you guys a chance to, think about your grandmother and her faith, and you could also look forward to the day that you'll be reunited because she was, a woman of faith. So I personally think that if those worship ceremonies could go as you said, how it went for your family, I really think it's fine, and another thought that occurred to me was sometimes I think we miss what's truly important, Like, I feel like we get caught up on some things that are outwardly kind of important to us, but then do we really think about what's at your heart? What's in your heart, and what would have Jesus done if he were in the same situation like you were? For instance, I think some years ago, I had my pastor kind of always struggling with this one question. On the Sabbath, he doesn't want to buy anything, go to a restaurant, of course, like a lot of Adventists think that's the right thing to do. But let's say he had to go visit this grandmother who is in need, right? And she doesn't really have a lot of food, and just on Sabbath he was doing something good. He was visiting with her, and I think the one example he gave was he really thought hard about whether it would be good for him to buy like a watermelon on a summer day, a hot summer day, and watermelons are the type of fruits that we eat here in summer, and just out of a kindness of his heart and in good gesture toward this grandmother, would it have been such a terrible thing if he actually bought a watermelon? And of course, I can already hear a lot of people screaming at me like, hey, if he knew that he would visit that person, he should have bought it before the sundown, before the Sabbath started. What I'm trying to say is, but is it really terribly wrong to do what would be good for that person, And then another thing is, I don't know if you guys ever heard of the American TV series. It was an old TV show, I think, but it's called The Gilmore Girls. And actually, when it was on air, I didn't know anything about it, obviously. I think it was on air back in 2006 or 2007. And when I was actually working at my TV station in my early career days, although I had no idea what the show was about, I heard some of my colleagues at the TV station kind of mocking Seventh-day Adventists because that's how the Seventh-day Adventists were depicted in the TV show. And I'm not saying it's a true depiction of the Seventh-day Adventist Christians, but I could kind of see why they were depicted that way. So there is this Korean American mother and daughter. So the daughter is a high school teenager, of course, and then the mother, I don't know if the mother was actually born in America or she had immigrated. But anyway, so there is this family. I don't know what happened to the father because it was just the mother and then the daughter. And one thing that really made me sad was how this Korean mother, who is devout Adventist, she was always so stern and angry. Like from her facial expression, the way she talked to her daughter, the way she talked to her customers. She was, because she owned an antique shop, in the TV show, what I mean is. And it's just like, okay, other things I can forget about and I think, okay, whatever. But she was always so angry, and she treated her child, her daughter, as if she were her possession. And rather than letting her really experience God in her own way, at her own pace, just like, forced everything on her. So, and the daughter, obviously, I think it's kind of like a stereotype of a Korean daughter. She couldn't really even say anything to her mother or object, even in a polite manner. She wouldn't even dream of it, and so she would always say, yes, mama, and then she would just do whatever things that Mrs. Kim would approve of, right? And so the daughter didn't have a say on what college she wants to go to. It was all decided, you're going to a Seventh-day Adventist college, and they kind of made fun of it, saying that, okay, so the daughter went to the Seventh-day Adventist college, I don't know which one, but when she arrived at the college, it had 2 parks. You know why 2 parks? One for girls, one for men, and they are not to commingle in one park together. So I'm not sure if that's really a true depiction of what our Adventist colleges are like, because I didn't go to one myself. I went to the so-called worldly college and university. But yeah, just putting all things aside, the way that the Korean mother, Mrs. Kim, ate tofurkey and served this vegan food to other people, or they wore these dresses that touched their ankle very, very long. The way she interacts with other people. Why is it that we say we are Christian, we love God, we want to be like Jesus, but we are not really being like Jesus? We are not really loving towards other people. Some of us are always angry and just filled with rage or We are not kind to other people. Why is that? And I feel like those things are more important when it comes to Christian walk, Christianity, and your faith, than just being caught up on, these little things like, oh, I was served this soup at, when I visited my friend, and it was actually chicken feet soup, or something like that. And we're like, oh, it's so sinful that we had that soup. No, are those things really, really, really essential? Like the essential things of our Christian walk? I don't think so personally. And yeah, I would have been a lot happier if Mrs. Kim and her daughter were depicted as, these loving, Adventist Christians who really, although they were, surrounded by these people who didn't believe, they were such a good example and inspiration for those people. And by their acts of kindness and, by their doing, the way they live their lives, other people were drawn to know about their God and their Bible, So just something that I wanted to share. And then I just want to quickly come back to what Samuel said about Daniel's three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The fact that they didn't run away, but they were there, it really kind of struck me, because the easiest solution would have been when they saw that the statue was being built up and they knew what was coming, right? And the easiest solution to avoid trouble would have been for them to just flee. Just I know what's gonna happen, so pack up your bags and just go to another city or something, right? But they just let things be, and they were ready to face whatever persecution. And so, in my own Christian walk, I was also disowned by my father, like just because I wouldn't participate in, this ancestral worship myself. And then, like a month later, he apologized, and then, I was then a member of the Kim family again and all that. But always, because I was so scared of my father and how my decision to be Christian would hurt my family, my loved ones, I just wanted to avoid such situation at, whatever cost it would be. I just didn't want to face that. But I guess, running away from troubles or situations, difficult situations, is not really the way that your faith can be really trained and built up, And so, so I did have to muster up courage to say, no, Father, I believe in the God of heaven, and that's why I cannot bow down. I cannot fall down before the graveyard of my ancestors. I'm sorry. And he was in denial and shock for several days. And that's when he just sent me a text saying, you're not part of the Kim family anymore. Yeah, and it was really, really shocking at the time. I was a teenager, and but by the grace of God, we've come a long way. And although he doesn't like the fact that I'm Christian, he is so proud of me in many other aspects of life, and he delights in the fact that I am his daughter, and so, and I really make a lot of effort to ensure that I am being a good daughter to him. So yes, there are things that I cannot just say yes to when, things concerning my faith or my Christian walk. But as Samuel said, if there is a family gathering, of course I'm the one who organizes things and activities for my family, and then I try to, really look at, okay, are they feeling well? My father, my mother, and my brother, are they really up for something new? Let's do this. And, I give it my very best, so that I won't have any regrets later on. And as we also have that commandment that we are to honor our parents, I try to do my best in that regard as well. So.
Yes, I think David and Youngji, you really made very practical examples that showed, Christianity should be about practicality. We shouldn't speak in abstract. Because we even go to the Bible to share examples to show that it happened. That's why we can also follow the footsteps. if Jesus Christ had not come down to earth and we are just reading about him, we say, oh, because he didn't come here, he doesn't know what we are going through, you know. But Jesus Christ came in and also added examples to what the previous saints or the previous people like Abraham, David, and Solomon, including Moses, did. And I like the fact that, David, when you were mentioning, you know, it's one thing talking about a worship center or a worship program and really doing the worship. People come to the house of God to worship, but they go out without worshiping. You should get that. So it's one thing. People can even obey. I'm going to obey this. When it comes to the real thing, he doesn't do that. Peter said he was going to go with Christ even to the last point. But when it came to the temptation point, he denied Christ. You get that? So I know your father had more experience, and sometimes, you know, even if we want to, we should disobey or we should try to provide counter opinions in love, obedience, and not being judgmental. I'm just connecting the two. Because sometimes I can disobey my father, but in a loving way. So, Dada, you know, you say this, but I'm really sorry, I can't do that. You get that? And do the other parts. She's mentioning now the father is proud of her, and this, that. You find that because your father will sit down and look at it. Oh, really? If my daughter is really this way, she's very this, it means there is something about this that she's standing for. But maybe she say, oh, I'm an Adventist Christian, right? And I can't do this. But the next moment, she's doing something very bad. They thought, oh, then this, my daughter or my son is really very disobedient. But she finds the good. And I hope there are examples like that where even parents disown their daughters and sons, but later, through their daughters and sons, you know, depending on the context, the parents really became church members just because of the things they learned from their daughters or those people. So just as you went, you saw your father, the approach he used. So going there, even though it was like, I would have preferred it was saying a memorial service rather than a worship service, ancestral worship service. But your father didn't care about the name. He went in there. He used the opportunity to evangelize to them on the key concept about the state of the dead. He used that opportunity. Even if she mentioned your, what's her name? Your aunt, your grandma's name several, I wouldn't have had a problem as long as she was not directing them to worship your grandma. She could mention your grandma several times, especially if she was a good person everybody wanted to learn from, and use her as an example for other people to come to Christ. Oh, you know, we know she was a good person, she did this, now she is waiting for the judgment, or the day Christ will, you know, we all know she was good, so the day Christ will come, she will reward her according to her work, and currently, according to the Bible, she's sleeping, and the Bible has said, so people may not understand, but through that opportunity, your father would have done it, and it was perfect. The only part, your father could have even preached at that point, but come to his desk. But when the other family members are saying, now it's time to worship our grandma, come and set up the candles, put this and say, let's bow, he can now refuse. He has attended, he has participated, but the worship part, he's not taking part. That is where Christ comes in. So there was this other example I wanted to give. I've forgotten exactly. So with yours, okay, I'll end here.
Yeah. So when I look back, and last week we had a memorial worship service with Zoom. We didn't gather, so we didn't have a on-site memorial worship service, but we still did it in the way that we used to. So, like I said, my dad, he would often talk about how God showed mercy to his mom and to me, my grandma. He also talked about her faith. I mean, some of his nephews are not going to church. He wants to evangelize, or he kind of wants to make this an opportunity, because otherwise, these people, some of his nephews or some of his family members they don't ever go to church at all. So there's no other chance to listen to a sermon or scriptures. So now this is like the only chance he can talk to them about God. Now, because they think this is some kind of a ceremony, traditional ceremony, they would come and they would at least listen, right? So they're there, and now my dad is using this opportunity to preach or introduce Christianity to them. I used to think it's not good, and maybe it's a compromise, but now that I look back, maybe this is not that bad. Yeah, so he always directs people to God, and we don't prepare foods and we don't prepare anything at all. We just gather together with Bibles and hymnal books, and we do a worship. And yeah. Oh, and coming back to what Yeonji said before, I remember watching that TV series, Gilmore Girls, but it was many years ago. So during my early 20s, I used to watch that TV series, and I only watched until season 2, I guess. It has many seasons, like season 7 or 8. But I never knew that they were depicted as SDAs. I knew they were Korean Americans. And I remember the stories how, I mean, just like what Yeonji described. But I didn't know that. I watched it to study English, so I had to study English on my own. So that's one of my ways to study English. So anyway, listening to that, I used to think, I still think that sometimes we Christians make Christianity look ugly to other people. We should be very careful about that. If we are too legalistic or judgmental toward other people or toward our own beliefs or practice, it may not be a good witness to people around us.
Yes, exactly. Now I remember because she was talking about a TV series. That's what I wanted to say. And you just used the perfect words about judgmental and legalistic. And there is something about Christians who claim to be more righteous. And sometimes it's, I know we may want to, but in Adventism, when the depiction, many Christians even depicted about Adventists. The idea is that, oh, Adventists, you don't take this. Adventists, you don't do this. Adventists, everybody is going to church on Sunday. You are going on Saturday. You say on Friday evening, your sundown, the Sabbath has begun. You are saying this, you are saying that. So people, some of our people, or even Christians, makes it so rigid and legalistic to the extent that it looks unattractive to the other people who want to be like in chains. Yeah, it shouldn't be, and that is not the first time it's happening in Christianity. Even in the days of Christ, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, they kept the rules so much to the extent that if somebody is even going to church, he missed somebody on the road, he's dying, he doesn't want to touch because he has to go to church. To the extent that even the handkerchief, you should have a weight you can carry on the Sabbath, otherwise you've broken the Sabbath. And to the extent that you can only deal with some people in society who you claim are righteous. When Jesus Christ even went to this guy, Zacchaeus' house, they condemned him. Oh, this guy is a sinner. He's this, he's that. You are even going to his house to eat. That was the problem. When the woman who met Jesus Christ and poured oil on the feet, washed, who later became a good disciple of Christ, everybody was complaining, this woman has sinned a lot, and if you really know who she is, you will not even touch her. That's how most Christians started. And Adventism too, is they mingle tradition or their own way of life to show that they are really righteous. But Christianity shouldn't be about that. It should be that, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing. The Bible says do this, do that, do that. I'll do my part, and the rest depends on the grace of God. Because even the Bible says your own righteousness isn't sufficient. You have to lean on Christ. So if you make it look like, I'm really, the Pharisees, to the extent they will say, I even fast. There's this story in Matthew where a Pharisee and another sinner. The sinner was praying, I'm really a sinner, I've sinned, I've done. But the Pharisee comes, oh, I pay all my tithes. I worship this. I even fast this number of times in a week. I do this. So he was counting on his righteousness, like most Christians do, and like most Adventists will do. But we should be like the other person. Even less, we don't say don't come to church on Sabbath or don't obey the commandment. Obey them. But think that on your own, and even the way you are doing cannot save you. And above all, one example we should do is that use Christ's example. Show love in everything you do. Don't be so rigid on the commandments or something that you don't even love your neighbor. Like the other one the pastor was saying. If I meet somebody is dying and I really need even to charter a plane and I can do it, and they even say I should pay all my money, let me pay and save a life. Because that's what Christ would have done. Christ will not say it's on a Sabbath, I'm not going to buy apple for somebody because that fellow is dying. But it shouldn't also become a kind of way of life. Okay, you always know you may visit somebody on the Sabbath, but buy it on Friday. But this one you don't know, you get that. But maybe I'm just going and I get that. I need to help somebody. Then do it. But if I also make every Sabbath day we need to go for shopping and go and see the poor people, then you've also abused something. Yeah, I like the example. Thank you.
Jesus never broke God's laws, but apparently he broke many of the Pharisees' laws in his time to approach people, to win people's mind. That kind of wisdom is something we need. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and opinions. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next week.
Thank you. Bye. Have a good week.
Thank you very much and happy Sabbath.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Bible Talk by the Songdo International Seventh-day Adventist Church. Please leave your comments and questions on our YouTube channel, The Bible Time, or on our Facebook page, Songdo Adventist Church. We'll be back with more insightful and interesting dialogues that matter for the Christian youth today, so stay tuned. That's all for now, signing off from Songdo, Republic of Korea. Thank you for listening, and God bless you.